right, everybody, we are approaching 5 minutes after 10. At this time, I will turn today's presentation over to Sheila Blanchard. And Sheila, whenever you're ready, we can begin.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us at North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality for our school bus program webinar. I'm Sheila Blanchard. I looked at the guest list today, and I know a lot of you participated last phase, and I've met a lot of you at our outreach meeting, so I'm so happy that you've joined us today. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. All attendees will be muted during the webinar. Questions, if you have them during the presentation, can be submitted in the question and answer box, and then we will address them at the end of the presentation during the question and answer time. The raise hand feature will be disabled until the question and answer time, and will only be considered by those who have called in, who have joined our webinar by phone. For those of you calling in, pressing *3 will raise your hand, and pressing *3 again will lower your hand. All other attendees must use the question and answer box to submit questions. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the DAQ VW website at a later date. Also, this presentation will be available for you to download, and be aware that the links found in the slides are only active during presentation mode. Finally, we've scheduled 2 hours to discuss the school bus RFP, but if we complete everything and answer all questions with time to spare, we have the option to adjourn early. If we're not able to answer all your questions by the end of our time, we will let you know how to get your questions to us. All right, let's get started. Okay, what can you expect today? Today I'm going to try and give an overview of the school bus program. I'm going to let you know how to submit your application. We're going to talk a little bit about the scoring criteria. We're going to talk about where to find information after this workshop, and then we're going to address your questions and answers towards the end. An important reminder is that this is not a public forum for comments on the implementation of the VW settlement. Quickly, the Phase 2 school bus is now open. It was released on March 7th, 2022. You can access the applications now. They're open until June 6th, 2022 until 11:59 p.m. First things first, this is a reimbursement program. This means that if you get awarded, you will buy your replacement buses and then submit claims documentation to be reimbursed for those buses. Just an overview of the timeline. The RFP has been released. Applications are open. The applications are due June 6th. Once we get those applications in, I'm going to do application evaluations of those vehicles between June and July 2022. We're going to try and have some project selections by the end of the summer, by August, and then we hope to announce shortly after we send it to our selection committee and let you know. There's $27.1 million available for Phase 2 school bus replacements. Approximately 50% of our funds in this phase will be prioritized for electrification projects. Electric school bus projects can also include the costs for the associated infrastructure for a bus. There are different levels of funding that are available depending on whether you're a government or non-government entity. Diesel, alternative fuel, and all electric replacements are eligible for up to 100% of the cost of replacement. For non-government, 25% of the costs for replacement for diesel and alternative fuel are eligible, and up to 75% for an all-electric project. If you're not currently on our mailing list and would like to receive email updates about the Volkswagen Settlement Program, please send an email with the word subscribe in the subject line to this email address, daqncvwgrants@ncdnr.gov. And you'll get all the information about all the programs going out, including award announcements and some of our reports that come out after the phase 2. Who is eligible to apply for these funds? Projects submitted by local, state, and tribal government organizations, projects submitted by public or private nonprofit organizations, and projects submitted by public-private partnerships where the lead applicant represents a public sector or public-private nonprofit entity. Eligible vehicles for replacement are school buses. They can include the daily yellow school bus as well as the activity bus. School buses have a very stringent definition. They transport students to and from school and school-related events. A lot of the replacement buses for the daily transportation will be on a Department of Public Instruction submitted project, and Kevin Harrison, a lot of you know who that is submitting an application on behalf of NCDPI. Of course, school districts are also welcome to submit projects on their own for the daily transportation. And if they are doing replacements of activity buses, please submit applications as a local school district directly to the GMS, the Grant Management System. Now, which buses are eligible for replacement? Eligible buses include 2009 engine model year and older class 4 through 8 school buses. Replacements may be new diesel, alternative fuels, propane, or an all-electric bus. And the model year of the replacement bus must be this year, last year, or newer. The buses that are replaced must be scrapped. Scrapped means to render inoperable and available for recycle at a minimum to specifically cut a 3-inch hole in the engine block for all engines. So when we ask for your documentation, you will send us an intact engine, and then a picture, and then you will send us a engine that has a very large hole in it. And this is because we do not want these engines to ever be re-articulated to go back on the road. Additionally, this includes disabling the chassis by cutting the vehicle frame rails completely in half. Once again, the funding levels for government-owned eligible buses for replacement, you're eligible for up to 100% of the cost of a new diesel or alternative fueled bus, and you're up to 100% of the cost of a new electric bus or shuttle bus. Sorry, we have the wrong slides in there. This is for the school buses. And finally, the cost share for the replacement of non-government is, as like I said before, 25% for a new diesel or alternative fueled bus, or 75% of the new all-electric school bus. Okay, so how does one apply for these funds? We have something called the Grant Management System, which I will refer to as the GMS for the rest of the presentation. You must get access to the GMS before you can apply for these grants. In order to get access to the GMS system, there are some other steps that you have to follow. In order to get access, you will get a welcome to the DAQ Enterprise Business System portal email, and that will let you know that you can log in to the GMS. First things first, if you do not have an NCID, you must have an NCID to request access to the GMS. A lot of folks already have an NCID. If you already have an NCID, that's great. If you don't, you would visit the NCID website and register to get your NCID. Once you have your NCID, you will go to the Grant Management System External Request application, and you would fill in these areas with your NCID, and that would allow you to access the system. Additionally, you will have to complete a W-9 form, which is the North Carolina Substitute W-9, and email it to us at our Service VW account. Each organization is allowed up to 3 authorized users. This means that if you're already in the system and you have your 3 users, right, if you applied last time, and you need to bring someone on, you will have to let us know so we can remove a user and add a new user if you already have 3. But each of these organizations, you can have 3 that can access your particular account and do grant work on your behalf. Once again, you will not be able to access the system until you get that welcome email. Finally, once you get access to the system, you will see a screen that looks like this, the Enterprise Business Services. You will use your NCID and your password from that NCID process to log on. We have a manual that we've created for the GMS, and we also have some instructions for the GMS to help you navigate the system. We're going to talk a little bit about how to navigate the system in the next few slides. Once you get in, you can take some time and go into the DAQ Training Library. Here you will have modules that will show you all kinds of stuff, like submitting an application, submitting a claim once you do get in that application, uploading documents, all kinds of stuff. So there's that resource is available to help instruct you and guide you through this system. There are a few things that you need to get together before you apply. The first thing is a school bus application form in the GMS. Every vehicle program in the VW diesel settlement requires a diesel bus and vehicle Excel spreadsheet, which can be found on our website. There's also a link to it in the GMS. We're going to need a quote for a vehicle being purchased if it's not on state contract. Most folks are purchasing through state contracts, so those funds are negotiated. But if you have a quote for whichever bus you're looking for, we'd like for you to submit that. With all electric vehicles, we request funding, who request funding for infrastructure, you must include an itemized budget. This includes installation and implementation of the infrastructure, as well as the supplies and the equipment. If you are a nonprofit, you must submit a copy of a charitable solicitation license from the North Carolina Department of the Secretary of State. And then additionally, if you have any supporting documentation, letters of support from community, letters of support for cost share, letters of support through education board, you're welcome to upload those as well in the application. Once again, the due date for the application and all supporting materials is June 6, 2022 by 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. We will not accept late applications. You can submit questions to our VW Grants website or email, and the subject line should be school bus program question, and that way it'll get directed towards me and I'll be able to reply and try and address your questions. Once again, things that you will need before the application, before you can submit the application, is access to the GMS. You're going to need all of your contacts for your organization and for whom you are applying on. You're going to need your project information and your organization federal tax ID. For each vehicle that you are submitting for replacement, you will need the model year, make, and mileage and other information of that vehicle, as well as the replacement vehicle engine information. We also need the infrastructure information and cost estimates if applicable, and any other documentation. This is the spreadsheet that all vehicles and all buses will need to have for replacement. As you can see, It includes for school buses, it will be school buses. It's fairly straightforward. The county of primary use is the county that the bus will be primarily, the route that the bus primarily will engage in. We'll need a plate number, a make, model, the engine model year, the fuel used. It's some of these things that are normally the information that you have on the fleet. And we also need the information of the new vehicle that you hope that you will submitting for replacement or to replace. So back to the GMS, when you get into the GMS, you will see a menu, and the first thing you're going to do is create new application. It's going to take you to a search. You're going to search, and I usually just push the search bar, and it gives you all applicable applications that you may apply for. And this is what that looks like. And you're going to go to the Phase 2 School Bus Program application form. It's going to take you, this is the application interface. This is what you have to fill out in order to submit an application. So we're going to go through this. The first thing you're going to see is the project, which gets some of the basic metadata. You're gonna have school bus replacement. The vehicle type is 4-A school bus replacement. The number of vehicles. I've used the DPI's application from last phase as our example here. Your eligible applicant type. And then your project type. And this is going to be dependent upon whether it's a diesel or an electric replacement. And then your street address, this is the address where we will remit payment. So, and then the latitude and longitude, if you just Google map your address, it will give you the specific coordinates to fill in here. These are our contacts. We have an authorized representative contact, a project manager, and a financial contact. Typically, the authorized representative is the person that has authorized the application. The project manager is the on-the-ground person that is managing the grant and the actual project itself. And then the financial contact is the person that we may contact for financial arrangements. We also have the budget here, and this is going to be the entire request in an application. Okay, so all of the requests for new equipment, if you have 4 or 5 buses, it will be all of those, the sum of all those buses. For infrastructure, the sum of all that infrastructure. Any kind of matching funding would be input here. And as you can see, we have the link to the vehicle spreadsheet that you can download and copy and paste your information into if you'd like. Or you can download it from our website and go ahead and fill it in with this information and then upload it later. You can either go up to here to move between the pages, or you can go to next to get to the next thing that you have to fill out. The project details includes the detailed description of your project. These are the more qualitative aspects of the application. So we want a general overview of your project. We would like to know how this fits into the beneficiary mitigation plan. This is typically about emissions benefits for your project. We have some likelihood of incentivizing emissions reductions. Is this the beginning of a sustainability project? Is it fitting into some goals that your organization has for zero emission? Things like that go into this box. We are asking about the social co-benefits. Are there different, is this bus a particular bus for a sensitive population? It's mostly children, so they're all sensitive populations. So, but there may be other factors that you may want to include here to increase the strength of your application. A description on whether you have the necessary technical and managerial execution for this project. So if you're doing infrastructure, do you have an electrician that you have doing the infrastructure? If you have done a grant like this before, feel free to put that in there that you have worked on a VW bus grant, things like that. And then we have another space for any additional information that you believe would be helpful for evaluating the project. One thing about these questions is that when we have similar applications with similar buses that could be funded, we are going to look at these answers in order to make some decisions and send those along to our selection committee. So it may, I would take some time and fill this out in a way that really makes the case and the argument for your project. So you're going to get to the end of the certification. You'll sign it, fill it in, it'll date automatically. You may want to do, if you try and submit it, and you have some errors in your application, some fields that have not been filled out, it won't let you do that. So before you do that, you can do a check and make sure all parts of the application are complete. And if you're not ready to submit, you can save and close your application and return to it at a later date. This is the screen. It will tell you that you have saved your application successfully. It will give you your application ID, and then it tells you that this application isn't complete until all required documents have been submitted. Here, you may begin to upload your attachments if you'd like. You can see that we have a choose file, which will give you a chance to choose which files you'd like to attach, and then attach them to the application. And I'll show you where those go in the next few slides. You may want to write down this application ID. When you go into the system, it will tell you which applications you have going, but it's always nice to have a number if you want to get there quickly. If you want to go in and edit that application that you saved and closed, you can go to Edit Application Form on the home screen, and it will open you back up to the next screen, which you put your application ID. Additionally, you can do *853, and if you know Boolean search, that will get you all the applications you can apply for that have that number. Additionally, you can just push search, and all the applications that you're allowed to work on will show up underneath the bar. You'll go back to your application, you will do the necessary edits, and then you will submit. That would be a fully submitted application, although you can submit attachments after you have submitted this application. So once again, you will get the screen that says your application has been submitted successfully. And then we have our checklist here for the required attachments for each of the programs. And once again, you will want to attach those required documents in order to have a complete application. If you do not attach those documents by June 6th, you will not have a complete application. Finally, once you have submitted the application, you may go in and view your application. We have given you the ability to look at some of the status, although it's very limited right now. But you will see that it's been submitted. You will see if some other metadata once it's in there. Once again, you'll do the same thing to find your application. And here's another way. You can also do attachments from this screen, even in a submitted application. And down here, if you see the attachment button, it will allow you to choose files and then upload your attachments. The list of attachments will be underneath here and will tell you everything that you have attached. I would recommend you use a naming convention in order to know which documents have been attached. The vehicle spreadsheet for your project should be the vehicle spreadsheet. Any quotes should be documented as quotes, etc., for ease, not only for your keeping track of your application, but for us in our review of that application. Things to know, we will not replace anything the engine model year 2009 and earlier. This is not a way to increase your fleet size. You must destroy a bus to get a bus. And that bus must also be like, the replacement bus must also be like the original bus in its duty cycle and some of the additions that it has on it. Your budget information should be as accurate as possible. Partial funding, we may use partial funding when awarding projects. Fill in those essays or long answers to evaluate projects that score similarly. And I'll say this again, applications must be submitted by June 6th, 2022. If you need assistance with your applications, I would recommend that you start early, you start now, so we can help you as much as we can before that deadline. Finally, this is important, do not sign any agreements with vendors or start any work until your contract is fully executed if you do get awarded. An application award, the letter that you get, the notification, is not a fully executed contract. We'll show this again. If you are not currently on our mailing list and would like to receive program updates, please subscribe to our listserv. Let's talk a little bit about scoring. The scoring this time around is similar to the scoring last time around, except for this time around we're using lifetime emissions benefits. So we're considering factors such as lifetime cost effectiveness, lifetime NOx emissions reductions, the location of the project, the environmental justice areas, whether or not you're doing an electrification project, and then we have a historically under-resourced county bonus, which is new this go around. And this is so that we can solicit and receive applications from places that we didn't get a lot of applications from last time, and some places that historically have not received a lot of funding for projects like this. Just to see the project scoring criteria, the NOx emissions reductions and the cost effectiveness are a large proportion of the score. Those will be based on the vehicle that you will be replacing, as well as the cost of the vehicle that you are replacing it with. The location of the project is a set score of the county, as well as the environmental justice score. Vehicle electrification projects get a 10 bonus points. And then there are 10 bonus points for being in a historically under-resourced county. And I'll show you that map in the next few slides of where that is. Similarly to the last phase, we have a certain proportion of the funds going to rural counties and a certain proportion of the funds going to urban and suburban counties. So this is just a breakdown of which of these urban and rural counties, which are which, and these vehicles will be ranked in their particular classification and scored appropriately. Lifetime cost effectiveness is the first criteria. It gets 30 points. This is the amount of VW funded. This is your ask from us per lifetime NOx tons reduced, which we calculate using the EPA division diesel emission quantifier. Under this criterion, we will get all of the vehicles, including the infrastructure for a project. The vehicles will be ranked, and the points will be calculated from a maximum of 30 points for the most cost effective to the least cost effective. Similarly, the lifetime NOx emissions reductions, which is based on that replacement vehicle, we will score those vehicles, we will rank the highest of the lowest, And then we will assign points through the number of projects divided by 30 to get the to give points to the highest to the lowest for emissions reductions. The location of the project. Part of the consent decree is requires us to look at the concentration of these Volkswagens in which county in order to set some of our criteria. So that's where this comes in. We use the mobile NOx estimates, which is the NOx amount that comes from mobile sources in order to create some NOx scores for each county. Additionally, we looked at the VW concentration scores. You can see those specific VW numbers in our mitigation plan. And then we use those scores for each county to create bins, and then we assigned points accordingly. If you want more information, you can look at our appendices and our tables to see where your county scores on that. Environmental justice is also a large component of the plan, as well as the implementation of the RFP. Environmental justice is defined as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. This is a large reason why we developed the historically under-resourced county outreach program. But the environmental justice score is also a separate score. We use the American Community Survey, which is a demographic survey by the U.S. Census Bureau, and we also use this to get a percentage of underserved in the population to develop these scores. You can get more information on that in our RFP and appendices as well. Once again, the historically under-resourced county outreach program, and some of you have probably seen us out and about. We've been out for 3 or 4 weeks, going out and talking to folks and really trying to get folks involved in our grant programs. These are defined as communities and counties that have an underserved population of greater than 15% as determined by our environmental justice group, and then are designated as Tier 1 by the North Carolina Department of Commerce. So for projects which the vehicle is primarily located in one of these counties, a bonus of 10 points will be awarded. Here's the map of the counties that are eligible for those points. In order to assist in determining which RFP you may apply under and whether or not you as an entity or your vehicle is eligible for funding, we built an eligibility tool, which is essentially a series of questions that will ask you to determine if your project is eligible for funding. And if you would like to take a look at that, it sends you to the right RFP. It tells you eligibility not just for school buses or transit buses, but also for level 2 charging, DC fast infrastructure, things like that. So visit that if you have some questions about whether your project or your vehicle is eligible. Once again, June 6th, 2022 by 11:59. We need all supporting materials and a complete application. Once again, all of this must be submitted to the grant management system that you must have access to, and it takes a few days to a week to get access to this grant management system. I urge you not to wait to do that. We will not accept paper, scanned, emailed, or faxed applications, and we will not accept applications after the due date. If you would like more information after today, please, first you can go to the RFP. That has almost everything that you might want to know about what is available in the school bus program and what kind of funding is available, what's eligible, things like that. You may also directly email your questions to this email, DAQ_NC_VW grants@ncdnr.gov. And we will address those questions as quickly as we can. You can also call me. Finally, we do have some additional resources in the community and some of our partners that are available to help on some of these applications. Many of our successful applications had some of these folks helping them do those applications in the past phase. I urge you to go to your local communities, your agencies, the Clean Cities Coalition, some of your sustainable groups, and they would be glad to help you or give you any information that you may need to assist your application. Here are our primary contacts for this program. I'm Sheila Blanchard, once again, an environmental program consultant and the school bus program manager. You may contact me by phone or by email. We have Brian Phillips, who's our compliance branch supervisor, and then Robin Barrows, who's our allied program supervisor. And most of us on the team can answer any of your questions about most of the programs. So reach out if you have questions. Wow, and I've talked a lot. And I guess we're now at the question and answer part of the presentation. So go ahead and bring in your questions and I'll do my best to answer them.
Hi, Sheila. We currently have 2 questions in the Q&A chat right now that I'll read for you. And if more come in during this, we'll add them to the queue. But first is from Carol. How long does it take to get the welcome to the DAQ business portal after you have sent in the the W substitute W9 and external request application?
In my experience, it takes a few days to get that welcome email. It can sometimes take longer depending on how quickly they're processed. I'm not really sure though what we're at this point. If anybody else on the team wants to chime in about, because we also get those emails. So I'm not sure how long it's taking right now. Anybody
Yeah,
know?
that would depend on the workload of the SAP team. So I would not wait to the last minute to request access to the grant management system. There are also processing requests for other agencies that use the system, not just us. So we encourage you to not wait to the last minute to submit those requests for access. Because if you wait for the last week before the application closes, there's no guarantee you'll have access before the application closes.
Yeah, so it could be a minute. So your best bet is to submit that as soon as you may. If a week goes by and you haven't heard anything, shoot us an email and we'll see what's going on.
Next from Ronak. We are a nonprofit with a 501c3, but we are a school, so exempt from requiring a charitable solicitation license. Is that still a requirement for us to submit, or can we provide our 501c3 documentation?
Oh, y'all are asking me hard questions that I don't really know about. I believe that a documentation of a 503(1)(c) would be adequate in that case. Brian, can you back me up on this?
Yeah, I think that would be applicable. If not, we will reach out to you if we need more documentation.
Exactly.
No other questions right now, and I don't see any hands raised.
Oh, I must have done a really good job with No questions.
Yeah. Sheila, can you discuss the other funding opportunities that are available for school bus project?
Yeah, I can do that. As many of you know, there is a little bit of a push for electrification in North Carolina, as well as through the current administration. There is a Duke Energy electric school bus pilot that is going on right now. I'm not really sure where they are in that whole thing, but if you go to their website, I haven't checked in a few days whether they're still soliciting interest in that, but I believe between that, the Duke Energy website and Kevin Harrison, you could get some information about how that's working in an application. We also have the bipartisan infrastructure funds that are coming down the pipeline in the next few, I believe it's probably weeks at this point, that are also going to be useful for funding electrification of school buses. And then we also have DERA, our annual emissions reduction program, which school buses are eligible to apply for. Those come out in the fall. And I guess if I missed anything, anyone can hop in and let me know.
Sheila, we have another question from Ronak here.
Okay.
Asking, for a non-government application, is it funded at 75% or $75,000 or the smaller of the two?
And that's with regards to the electric infrastructure.
Yes, thank you, Melanie.
Actually, I apologize. That was a slide that was not updated for this presentation. As far as infrastructure, it would be up to 75% of the cost of the bus and the infrastructure. That would be that a non-government entity would be eligible for. And I do not think that in this go around, I don't think we put any limits on the cost of that infrastructure. However, because this is a competitive project, those very high ballooning infrastructure costs are going to make your project less competitive in the cost effectiveness criteria.
A question from Ron. If we currently have a 66 passenger bus and need to replace it with a 72 passenger bus, is that okay?
I would say it would depend, as long as the class does not change between those buses. The vehicle weight ratio doesn't change. I would say that if it's doing the same duty cycle, that should be fine.
And no other questions right now.
Okay, well, how about one last call for questions? Type them if you got them.
We do have a question when this presentation will be available. I think online, they mean.
The recording, it usually takes a few days. You should be able to download the PowerPoint shortly after this, depending on how quickly we put it up there.
It should be available before the end of the day.
Thank you, Brian.
Tony asks, if we are already in the GMS system, would we start at the new application button?
Hey Tony, how are you? Yes, if you're already in the system, when you get to that screen where you put in your organization and you say you would like to do a new application, it will ask you. You will have to open up a new application in the new Phase 2 school bus application module. So yes.
And a follow-up on the online presentation. Can you say where will the presentation be available?
It will be on the school bus, Phase 2 school bus RFP website. Not sure if I have that emails or that address somewhere.
We'll send an email after the webinar with a link to the presentation for everybody that
Yeah.
participated. Once it's available.
Thank you, Brian.
Few more questions coming in. What does having you as a third party to help with the application mean? Asks Jeff.
I'm not sure I understand the question. What does having, can we get some clarification?
How can third party assist with application?
Oh, so third parties can assist in applications a multitude of ways. Third parties such as the Clean Cities Coalitions or some of our partners that help applications can actually help entities compose and draft applications, eligible and competitive applications. They're there to help, so they can help. A third party in a public-private partnership a third-party public organization could also serve as the primary entity on a public-private partnership. Additionally, a third party, you could hire a consultant to do your applications on your behalf. And if you do that, that consultant would have to submit a letter with the GMS access that assures that they are working on your entity's behalf. So there's a multitude of ways that third parties can assist in applying, entities applying for these funds. They could also submit letters of support. And if that's not your question explicitly, please clarify the nature of the third party. But I hope I answered it.
Jeff says thanks. So
thanks, Jeff.
The next question is from Russell. And we might need clarification here. It says, if I have an activity bus old without emission that the GVWIS less than what the GVW is greater, will it work?
Okay, so all activity buses, A, B, C, D, are eligible to apply if they're older than 2009. So as long as it is on the road, as long as it's functioning, we will not replace buses that are broke down and do not serve or have a duty cycle right now. So as long as it spends 70% of its time in North Carolina and it puts annual mileage on it and it's older than 2009, it should be, and it transports students and to student related events, it should be eligible.
Kevin is asking, how is partial funding determined within a submitted project? And should grant applications contain wording for priority in the event only partial funding is granted?
Good morning, Kevin. First off, partial funding is something that we reserve the right to do, that our selection committee reserves the right to do. It may mean that all applicants will get some proportion of their application funded. But it also may mean that some vehicles within an application will be funded and others will not. Partial funding has a lot of different meaning, and it just may mean that you will not get as much as you have asked for. The second thing, as far as prioritizing which you would like to have funded, in the event that certain vehicles are funded over others, that will actually be part of the award letter, and they will be prioritized based on the mitigation of the vehicle that is being replaced. If those things all being equal, and there isn't an obvious vehicle that scores better than another, oftentimes we will ask the applicant which of their vehicles they would like to put to have in funded. As far as if you would like to prioritize certain parts of an application, if for instance you would like to prioritize getting an electric bus, and you can handle the infrastructure, you can certainly put that in your application. Things like that. You can put in those long answers, you can put a lot of things that your preferences for funding if you'd like. That doesn't mean we'll do anything that it will go into our decision making, but if you do have concerns about which buses you would prefer to have funded, you're welcome to include that in that other information section.
But we would choose the ones with the most emission reductions.
Agreed.
So, right.
Ronak has another question here. How competitive were previous phases? Any estimates on what percentage of applicants might get funded?
The last phase was for 12 or so $1 million. We funded every applicant that was eligible under that first phase. They didn't get all their buses funded, but most were funded. We were able to fund, I believe, 111 buses out of 122 applied vehicles. Therefore, the previous phase was very, we were able to fund a lot of the projects that we got. I do not have the same feeling about this phase, because I do believe while there is twice as much money, there are some other factors that are involved that include some competition for electric projects, some allocation to electric projects for some of the funding, and just given the kind of interest that I've seen over the past few weeks, I suspect we're going to have a very large applicant pool, which is great because that means that we can fund the most egregiously emissioned buses that we get in our application pool. As far as the competition, I would suggest that a cost share of any type submitted by your organization for a bus is going to go a long ways in some of the scoring. And that will be true for any of these programs under the Volkswagen mitigation funds.
I'm just checking to make sure I got all of the questions. I don't see any new questions coming in right now. So I think that was the last question.
Okay. Well, we're coming on the top of the hour, which is a good time to finish. I will maybe make one more call for questions if you have them. Otherwise, I really appreciate all of you being here and coming to the webinar. I urge you to begin your applications now. Reach out now if you have questions, and we are here to help. And it's been a pleasure. We got anything, Sean?
Nope.
All
Nothing.
right. I think we're going to close it out, everybody.